Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the patrons supporting this channel. Hello everyone, today we are going to look at creating the backstep and roll abilities, as well as for consuming the stamina and also the stamina regen and the stamina block effect to allow stamina regeneration and to block this stamina regeneration when we are performing the ability, like so. Okay, so let's start. Let's start by going into the Makinom site, then click on Guide Extensions, scroll down, and here in the script section we need to download the Unity Input Action Input Key script. So click on the download script, and once it is downloaded, let's import it into Unity. So I have my scripts here already, and I can just drag and drop the Unity package and click import. After the script is imported, we can now open the Makinom editor, and if we go into the base control section, input keys, if we want to add a new input key, now we have this. For example, let's start by creating the new input, and let's call this one, I'm gonna call it Xbox B. So this is going to be, or this is going to handle our roll, backstep, and later on the dash. So now we can untick fix update because we are using the update instead. And then here in the input origin, since we imported this script, we have now this Unity input action. So that allows us to bind from the editor right away the actions that we created. So let me decrease the size, and from here we have our actions that we added, so we get this action backstep. So double click on that one, okay, and click save. Okay, now that we are here, we can leave all the settings as they are, and what we can do here in the icon sprite is add our B button sprite that we added previously. So we could either click on select, and I believe is the icon, yeah, the 18 icon atlas. So double click on that one, and here in the icon text code for the TextMesh Pro, if we want to go to the resources and the settings itself, here in the icon atlas, we can click on the icon atlas and check here in the sprite glyph table, and we can see that the B corresponds to the glyph ID 18. So we can start typing here sprite index, let me move the cursor away, index equals 18. There we go, and click save. For some reason, if I click here find TMP tag, it will clear out this text here. So I don't know if this is a bug or this is supposed to work like that. But anyways, let's save the changes and let's continue. Okay, so before leaving this window, let's rename the GUID to something more meaningful. So let's type Xbox B, something like that. And the next step is going to be going into the status settings or section, and then in the abilities subsection we have a default ability, so let's reuse this default and change the name. So edit text, and let's call this one back step. Click OK, and let's rename the GUID as well. So back step, I will put a dash ability, single T, and click OK. Alright, so click on the ability settings, and here we can see the ability type is set to none. So let's create quickly a new ability. So here in the default, click on edit, and let's call this one passive abilities, or just passive. Click OK. Same thing with the GUID, so passive abilities, right? Let's go back to the abilities, back step, ability settings, ability type, passive. Okay, we want this ability to be usable in both during battle and field, and then we can leave everything as it is. So now let's jump into the user settings, and here we want to change the auto consume to always, and right away here in the status changes we need to click on add a status change. Scroll down, and the change type we need is status value. The status value we need to change is the stamina. We don't care about this show flying text or show console. We need the operator to subtract from our stamina, and let's say for the back step we want to subtract 10 points. Okay, and we can leave everything as it is. So let's save the changes. And the next thing we want to do is, now that we have this back step, we can just copy it. Let's select the copied back step, and in the content information let's change the name to roll. Click OK. Let's do the same for the GUID. So roll ability, and since we copy this from the previous one, we can go directly to the user settings, and in this case what we want to do, for example, is increase a little bit, let's say 20 points of stamina for each roll, right? And click the save settings. So the next step now is to create a control map that is going to trigger our abilities. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so let's go into the base controls section. Down below in our framework we have control maps, and we have a default control map created for us when we installed the first time or saved the first time ORK framework. So for the sake of having always something meaningful, I will change the name from default to, let's say, player control maps, and same thing for the GUID, player control maps. And if you want, you can add some audio clips, whether this control map was successfully executed or not, or fail. I won't do that, but I will check that this control map can be used also in field and in all battle system, even though we are going to use only one battle system, but check both, right? So For conditions, we are not going to add any conditions so far, but let's click here in add control key. So now we need to go to the control key, and nasty error there, but anyways, let's here in the input settings for this control key, let's select our newly added control key that we added, which is the Xbox B. We want for this input key to use the speed of the player, because remember that we want to roll if we are moving and backstep if we are not moving. So let's say that for the minimum speed we want 0.5, and here in the action settings we need to select the action type to ability, and the ability that we want is the roll. So this is important, since we can create several control keys in one control map. The order is important because of course if we add first of all the backstep and later on the roll, the condition is that we need to be moving. So if we add first of all the backstep, it's always going to be trigger the backstep and never the roll, because the check is not checking for the movement for the backstep. I hope this that understandable. So let's continue in the settings for the roll ability. We are triggering the roll ability in this case if we are moving. We can leave use group target, use individual target, but we need to uncheck during target selection, of course. So this is not a condition that we need to check with. So after creating this input key, since the backstep is really similar to this one, we can just copy, and now we have a second control key. So let's click on the control key 1, and in this case we don't want to use speed, so let's uncheck that one. We can leave action ability, but in this case the ability that we want to trigger now is the backstep ability, and we can leave everything as it is. So let's save the changes. And the next step is now to let the combatant learn or apply or add the control maps, and of course learn the two abilities that we created. So let's move on. So let's jump into the combatant section. Let's click on the combatant subsection and select our player, and from here we can jump into the base settings, and down below we have here control maps, and we can click on add control map, and we can select our newly created player control maps. So that with that, now our combatant, our player, can use this control map that we created. Now that we are here as well, we can click on the attacks and abilities, and in the ability development, let's create add ability, and we can select here the backstep ability. We don't care about show notification, show console, and let's create another one, and in this case it's going to be the roll ability. Same thing for show notification and show console. And since we are also not using dynamic classes in this game, we can also uncheck those. So after making this change, let's save our settings. Close the editor or put it away, and let's give it a try. Okay, so let's hit play. and let's see, pressing B, and the stamina is not being consumed, nor with the roll, so I probably missed something. Let's double check in the status, sorry, in the abilities itself. So let's go to the status, abilities, backstep, content information, ability settings, target selection. Yeah, so of course the ability is set to be applied to enemies, target type enemies. No, we want it to be applied to ourselves, and let's do the same thing for roll, self. There we go. So save the settings, and let's give it another try. And there we go. Now we can subtract stamina, right? And if we move forward, we can roll. Okay, so the next step now is to, of course, apply the stamina regeneration, and for that we are going to create a status effect. So let's do that. Let's stop play mode. Let's open up Makinom editor again, and let's go to, or navigate into the status effect, and let's select the first default status effect, and let's rename it, and let's call this one stamina regen. Click OK. So we are going to add this status effect as a auto effect to our player combatant. Okay, this stamina regen is going to regenerate the stamina over time. Let's say 2 points every 0.1 seconds until the stamina gets full. Right. So now we have renamed the stamina. Let's do the same for the GUID. So let's type here stamina regen effect. And next, let's go to the change settings, and here in the status value change, let's click on add status value change. Again, the status value we want to change, it is the stamina. We want to set this change, the change set on time, so it's going to use time for that, and we can leave initial use checked, and we want to set to every 0.1 seconds. This status is going to be used in field and in battles. We don't care about this flying text and console, right? And the operator that we want to use is the add operator. Okay, the change value we can leave it as value, and the operator to add, but not in percent but in value, and the value we want to add is 2 points every 0.1 seconds. So let's save our changes. And now let's add a new status effect. Let's go to the content information section, and in the edit text, let's call this one stamina regen block. So we want to use this status effect to block the regeneration. So for example, if we are rolling, we don't want the stamina consumption to be firing with the stamina regen or colliding with it. So we want to add a small timer to block the regeneration. That's the reason of this stamina regen block. Let's also change the GUID here. So stamina regen block effect. Au contraire, we want this status effect, instead of being auto applied, we are going to use a schematic in the status itself to call this regen block. So for this effect we want to end the effect, so let's say end after time, and let's say that we want this to block the stamina regen for 1 second. We can leave battle and field as they are, and the next thing we need to do is to go to the change settings. In the status value change, let's click on add, and we want again to change the stamina, but in this case we want to select here change block to positive. Okay, so it will block any positive incremental positive from the stamina. Okay, so let's save the settings. And now let's create our stamina regen block schematic. So click on schematics, and we can leave the default settings and just right click and select add node, combatant, status, change status effect, link both nodes, and in the change status effect, and down below in the combatant object we need to leave machine object. So this means that when this status effect change is used, or the combatant whose status is changed, the machine object will use this schematic. Okay, so down below we have already a status effect change index, so we can leave the change to add, and the effect that we want to add is the stamina regen block. Okay, so let's go and save our new schematic. And let's call it stamina regen block schematic, or whatever name you wish, and click save. Now we can go back into our status value, stamina, and in the change schematic, let's click on add schematic and select our stamina regen block schematic. For the time being, let's just enable this for the player. And we also want to limit the use of this schematic when we are decreasing the stamina. So let's click on here and use change check in the value change check section, and let's select the check type to is less, and the value we can leave it as 0. So if the stamina is less than 0, we stop using this stamina regen block. Okay, so let's save the settings. And the last thing we need to do now is revisit the combatant. So let's go to combatants, player, and below in the status settings we want to add our stamina regen status effect as a bonus. So let's down below In the status bonuses, check on custom bonus, and now we can select a status value bonus and select our no, it wasn't that one. Attack modifier here, auto status effect, and let's add our stamina regen. Okay, so let's save the changes. And let's close the editor. Let's click play. And then we have the auto regen. There we go. Everything good. So I hope you liked the video, and on the next one we are going to deviate a little bit and start preparing some menu screens, and also I want to cover transitioning to another scene just to showcase how easy it is before going further with the equipments and completing the status system and equipments. So yeah, stay tuned and see you on the next one.